The seriousness in the esoteric work and the abnormality of our psyche. First of all, my dear brothers, it is necessary to understand that what we are truly seeking is the inner self-realization of the being. On one occasion, I was speaking with the director of a certain school, whose name I will not mention, and I asked him a question. His answer, and he has already passed away, left me very saddened. No, we are not searching for the inner self-realization of the being. We are not interested in that. What we want is the power of the mind, the unity of life, etc., etc. He gave me a whole series of unfortunate excuses. I asked myself, why would we engage in these kinds of studies if we were not aiming at the inner self-realization of the being? What would the purpose be? To distract ourselves? To entertain ourselves? In the profane world, there are countless ways to have fun. At the theater, at bullfights, and so on. So before anything else, we must be serious. There are many schools of cheap pseudo-occultism and pseudo-esotericism, but it is truly difficult to find serious people. If we were to call to the path the 5 million people in Mexico alone who devote themselves to such superficial pseudo-esotericism, and if we were to place before them the genuine postulates of Gnosis, if we were to teach them what the path of self-realization truly is, I am certain that most of them would run away. Many are learned in theosophy, in pseudo-Rosicrucianism, and in countless other systems. Unfortunately, it is still difficult to find people of real seriousness. Almost all are seeking some form of entertainment. What they really want is to pass the time. But when we present the principles of genuine self-realization and invite them to actual work, they flee. Therefore, they are not seeking self-realization. They are seeking diversion, nothing more. We, above all, must be serious people. I could not call serious someone who does not undertake the self-exploration of his own inner nature, someone who is not concerned with the knowledge of himself. The ancients said, "Nocite te ipsum," man, know yourself, and you shall know the universe and the gods. How could one know the astral world if one does not know oneself? How could one understand the universal mind without first understanding one's own mind? How can one know the world of natural causes if one is ignorant of the causes of one's own psychological errors? So much has been said about the inner worlds, but if one does not know his own inner world, how can he know the inner worlds of the Earth, the solar system, the galaxy, or the infinite? We must be serious. In the world of cheap pseudo-esotericism and pseudo-occultism, there is much inferior mentalism. For example, in Venezuela, there is a sanctuary where a lady, falling into a trance, began giving initiations to everyone. This person has the 4th initiation. This one has reached the 5th. He is already a hierophant, and other such absurdities. We truly need to be serious, very serious. Obviously, those who accepted this situation in that Lumisial were not serious people. It is impossible for me to believe that a serious person could accept such nonsense. Many people want initiations. This person is already in the 5th initiation. He is a Mahatma. Or a medium tells someone, you are now in the 6th initiation. Tomorrow you will attain the 7th. All of this is a lack of seriousness. How could someone know the inner worlds if he does not even know his own? In inferior mentalism, there is a great deal of absurdity. People who are dreaming and believe they are awake, and the worst part is that they daydream while imagining themselves conscious. These negative dreamers, these mediumistic types, these hallucinated individuals project their dreams onto others, and they see in other people nothing more than their own negative, incoherent, and absurd fantasies. That is the crude reality of the facts. We want objective realities, not absurd and incoherent dreams. I cannot accept dreams. I want objective realities, and that is what I wish for all of you. Such objective realities become possible only when the consciousness has been objectified. But consciousness cannot be objectified unless one first passes through the Buddhist annihilation, a term that frightens the members of many schools. In truth, annihilation is something that deeply disturbs the schools of cheap pseudo-esotericism and pseudo-occultism. The ego does not want to undergo annihilation. The ego wants to live at any cost. It refuses to die. Obviously, my dear brothers, we must understand the doctrine of the many. Some have said that I took the doctrine of the pluralized I from Gurdjieff, and they ask, how could it be possible that being the avatar of Aquarius, you took it from him? They are mistaken. I did not take this doctrine from Gurdjieff, nor is Gurdjieff its author. Gurdjieff took this teaching from Tibet. It is a Tibetan doctrine. And I took this doctrine from ancient Egypt, from the land of the pharaohs. I knew it in Egypt, and I encountered it again in many other ancient schools. The first ones to teach this doctrine were the avatars of Lemuria. So, Gurdjieff took it from Tibet, and I took it from Egypt. I do not believe it is any sort of crime that I received it from Egypt. However, in ancient Egypt, the I was not known as the ego. Ego is a Latin word. The pluralized I was called Seth, and the psychic aggregates, spoken of by the Tibetans, not only by Mr. Gurdjieff, were known as the red demons of Seth. We, the Egyptians, knew, and I say we, the Egyptians, because I am an Egyptian, and this brain I am now using to think and speak was buried for 4,000 years beneath the earth. That Horus, whom we actually pronounced Horus, was captured by the red demons of Seth. When we spoke in this manner, we meant to explain to our devotees that the red demons of Seth had trapped the human consciousness. The devotees of the High and Low Nile understood this, and all of us were engaged in a struggle against the red demons of Seth. Obviously, what I'll mean is that we were fighting against the I's that personify our errors, or, speaking in strict Tibetan terminology, against the psychic aggregates that embody our defects. In Tibet, the doctrine of the many is the very foundation of Lamaism. There is no doubt that Mr. Gurdjieff, who lived as a Lama in Tibet, extracted this doctrine in order to teach it to the Western world. The doctrine of the many is well known in Tibet, and when we say it is necessary to destroy the psychic aggregates that personify our errors, the Tibetans express this same idea in the following way. The inner Buddha must destroy the doctrine of the many within himself. That is to say, the inhuman elements we carry inside. There are also fallen bodhisattvas in Tibet and the Himalayas. Many times the lamas, the disciples, must patiently endure the entire day as the various psychic aggregates of a fallen lama, a fallen bodhisattva, pass through and successively take control of his body. They must patiently tolerate these absurdities, waiting for the moment when the procession of aggregates ends and the real being of that instructor finally appears, even if only for a moment. Then they receive the teaching they were waiting for. Afterwards, the being departs, and the eyes once again torments the poor disciples. To end the doctrine of the many within oneself is not easy. This is how we thought, and how the ancient Egyptians still think. It is necessary to kill the red demons of Seth. Within those demons, within those aggregates, is enclosed the essence. Among the devotees of Chan and Zen, the essence receives another name, the Buddhata. Thus you can see that this doctrine is not the exclusive property of Mr. Gurdjieff or of anyone else. It is universal. This Buddhata, this psychic material within us, is important. It is the essence imprisoned among the red demons of Seth, among the psychic aggregates. It is necessary to break each one of these undesirable elements we carry within in order to free the essence. Only in this way will we attain integration and become sacred individuals. We well know that in order to disintegrate the psychic aggregates, we must direct the lance against them, and this is taught clearly by Richard Wagner, a great master underrated by the know-it-alls of cheap pseudo-occultism. Richard Wagner, with his Parsifal, gives an extraordinary lesson in tantric esotericism. Parsifal represents the inner Christ, or the Christ Jesus. He certainly represents the adeptus, who is not yet an exempt adept, although I would say he symbolizes the adeptus exemptus. Parsifal also has his divine mother, represented by Herzlide. Anfortas, the king of the Grail, bore a wound in his side, a terrible injury from which blood and water flowed. His disciples continually washed it in a nearby lake, yet it would not heal. One day, in the presence of Kundry, a kind of Magdalene, the king of the Grail fell into her sensual arms. As he fell, Klingzor seized the lance and wounded King Anfortas with it. Brothers and sisters, you must understand that the lance is a sexual tantric symbol. This means that he had fallen. Parsifal, however, did not fall. He was almost a victim of Kundry, Gundrigia, Salome, but in the supreme moment he remembered King Anfortas and his wound. He cried out for help from his mother Herzlide and from the Savior Christ, and he was assisted. Kundry, singing in Wagner's opera with her enchanting voice, calls out desperately to the terrible Klingzor, who used her for his sinister aims. Klingzor appears and hurls the lance at Parsifal, but Parsifal, in ecstasy, catches it and traces the sign of the cross with it. Immediately, Klingzor's castle collapses into the abyss. Parsifal triumphs over the ordeal. Later, he returns to the castle of Montsalvat, and when he touches the side of King Anfortas with the lance, the wound is miraculously healed. I recall the principle of Paracelsus and echoed by Hamlet, similia similibus curantur, the same is healed by the same. If the lance, symbol of masculine sexual electric force, can make the gods fall, it is also true that, with the same lance, one can heal the wound, return to the path, and attain final liberation. Parsifal draws the sign of the cross with the lance. You know very well that the union of the vertical phallus within the horizontal ectus forms the cross. Thus Parsifal forms the cross, and here lies the key in Richard Wagner's work. It is precisely in the moment of chemical or metaphysical copulation that one holds the power to destroy Klingzor's castle. That castle is carried by everyone, for within it reside the red demons of Seth: anger, greed, lust, envy, laziness, gluttony, pride, and all the rest. Precisely in the supreme moment of the sexual act is when we can use the lance to destroy the red demons of Seth. Krumheller teaches this as well, though in a more introductory form, when he says man and woman in the supreme moment of chemical copulation are surrounded by the forces that created the universe, and that by retaining those forces, we can purify ourselves. His teaching is incipient, but it exists. The Tibetan tantrics who teach the use of the lance to eliminate the red demons go much further. There is even a master who wrote a book on sexual magic, a very wise German who understood the key and explained it. So there is abundant documentation, but it is all written in code, and one must know how to extract the meaning from Sanskrit, Tibetan, Chinese, and other texts. You already have the key, and you know how to use it, so it is necessary to apply it in order to destroy the psychic aggregates. However, every aggregate must first be fully understood in all levels of the mind before it can be eliminated directly in the ninth Dantesque circle. As I told you during our talk in Maholtepec, the psyche of human beings is altered, it is abnormal. This misfortune originates from the time when the abominable Condortiguador organ was removed by the arch-physicist-chemist, common angel Loisos. The archangel Sakaki and his high delegation had implanted this organ in humanity to stabilize the geological crust of the world. That purpose was achieved, but due to an error in the trans-infinite mathematical calculations, the organ was withdrawn too late in Lemuria. As a consequence, the negative results, the psychic aggregates, the inhuman elements, became firmly established within the 5 centers of the human machine. Since then, the consciousness, the essence, the Buddhata, the most pure within us, became altered because it remained trapped within these undesirable psychic elements. Thus, an abnormal psychic condition was established in humanity. Because the psychic material, the buddhata, the essence, is imprisoned within inhuman elements, the result could not be otherwise. Since then, the human psyche is altered, and the three-brained beings who inhabit the earth are abnormal. I pronounce the word slowly. As I also told you in Maholtepec, one does not realize one is abnormal or unbalanced until one eliminates the psychic aggregates. Only when one has achieved the radical disintegration of these undesirable elements does the essence become normal again. Once normality is restored within oneself, one immediately perceives the abnormality of others. Only then can one directly verify, through one's own experience, the stark reality of the psychological imbalance of humanity. From that point on, one sees one's fellow men as unbalanced beings. One feels as though one is living in an insane asylum, the planet Earth. Now you can understand for yourselves the origin of wars. Often a cosmic catastrophe produces cosmic waves that strike the brains of the human machine, and because people are abnormal, they go to war. If they were normal, they would not do so, but being abnormal, they raise flags, justify their battles with various excuses, and believe themselves sane, yet they act as they do precisely because of their abnormality. A single unfortunate planetary conjunction can provoke a war, millions of humanoids against millions of humanoids. Under such abnormal conditions, how can people love one another? It seems very difficult to me that a marriage should last into old age. Men are abnormal, women are abnormal. I do not understand how they manage to coexist. When they are happy, living with harmony and beauty, a single word, misunderstood, interpreted negatively, provokes anger. One person says something that wounds the other, and soon they are, as we used to say in my home, changing the plates. And why should couples have to change plates? Poor plates, poor cups, poor glasses, all of it is nothing but abnormality. Friends appreciate each other, yet for any trivial reason they quarrel and the friendship ends. When we analyze the cause, we see it was something insignificant, worthless. People who seem respectable and serious end up doing foolish, absurd things. All this is the outcome of psychological abnormality. Clearly, the three-brained beings of Earth cannot relate harmoniously with the three-brained beings of other inhabited worlds. Undoubtedly, there are other planetary humanities very interested in studying our abnormality. From time to time, they take someone aboard a cosmic ship. I ask you to forgive our extraterrestrial brothers when they take someone. They always return the person. They do this for two reasons. First, to cross them with people of other planets, because the sixth race is being formed, and second, to study the abnormality of terrestrial humans. These individuals are examined thoroughly in the laboratories aboard the cosmic ship. Because terrestrials behave in such peculiar ways, they attract the attention of the whole cosmos. They have no harmony, no control over their words. They quarrel over trivialities and fight without real reason. These beings are so strange, so rare, that they provoke astonishment throughout the cosmos. For this reason, many terrestrials have been taken, and they will continue to be taken in order to be studied in the laboratories of cosmic ships. They are used as laboratory rabbits. They are examined with instruments, with lenses, and observed in order to understand the physiological and psychological processes of their abnormalities. Afterwards, they are returned to the place from which they were taken, but one does not perceive these abnormal states while one still has psychic aggregates within oneself. You are here listening. Yes, I know you are listening, but I am absolutely certain that you are not conscious of what I am saying. Even though you hear my words, deep inside you continue to believe that you are normal, and I do not blame you for this. You do not know the psychic condition you are in. Only when you destroy the ego, when you reduce it to cosmic dust, do you attain normality. Only then will you realize that you are abnormal. Before that moment, it is impossible. So, my dear brothers, In tonight's talk, I wish to invite you to recover the normality of the psyche. I want you to understand the necessity of passing through Buddhist annihilation. I have told you that the ego of each one of you has absolutely no intention of dying. I am astonished that you have the patience to listen to me. It surprises me, because the ego of each one of you must see me as a terrible demon. It is obvious. To your ego, I am death itself. My true name for the ego is death, and the ego does not like that. You hear these words and think, well, this is not the time to die. That will be for another time. Patience is needed. Perhaps the master is right, or perhaps he is exaggerating. The ego looks for excuses to escape what is approaching: death. The death it refuses to accept. The ego will never willingly accept its own dissolution. Therefore, my dear Gnostic brothers, knowing your present condition, I invite you to study. As an imitatus, I am training you so that you may work upon yourselves. You must have continuity of purpose, because the ego does not want to die. And in this situation, how could you want to die if you are the ego? The only thing that can save you is immediate study and practice. It would be worthwhile for you to study my books, The Great Rebellion and Revolutionary Psychology. I have asked the brothers, well then, have you studied my book, The Great Rebellion? Yes, they say. We have read it. But have you studied it? Well, not really. We read it at 500 kilometers per hour. At this I am astonished. So many years were required for me to write The Great Rebellion and Revolutionary Psychology, and they read them in a few hours. They come to me repeatedly saying, Master, I want to work on myself, to dissolve the ego. Can you teach me? What an abnormal psyche the terrestrial has. They ask me to teach them how to dissolve the ego after reading Revolutionary Psychology, where I have already given all the instructions. What is happening? They have ruined the intellectual center completely. For example, in Atlantis or Lemuria, no one studied in that way. A Lemurian considered letters to be sacred. Their alphabet had 300 consonants and 51 vowels. In Lemuria, written characters were holy, and no one accepted even a single paragraph of a sacred text without first becoming conscious of it. To become conscious of a paragraph, they would spend entire days meditating upon it. They knew what they studied. When someone reads at 500 kilometers an hour and then says, I've already read the book, I know that book, the intellectual center is damaged. This is not the proper way to study. One must not proceed to the next paragraph until one becomes conscious of the one before. One must know what one is feeding into the intellectual center. On one occasion, while traveling through South America, I met an Indian who lived near the Summum Supremum Sanctuarium. He was a Mama, a kind of Mahatma. He was a small man, barely over a meter tall, with long hair but a long black beard. Wearing a tunic, he looked like a thin, diminutive Christ. He began speaking on themes I had written in the Resolution of Bell. I asked him, "How is it Brother Bernardino Alfaro Torres, for a missionary had baptized him with that Latin name, how is it that you know about my book, The Revolution of Bell, if you do not know how to read or write? You are illiterate." "Mister," he replied, "we, the members of the tribe of the Mamas, do not need to read a book. We examine it in the astral world. The Revolution of Bell is a book of the goddess nature, and we keep it on the altars of our temple sanctuaries." This man was astonishing. He knew the entire book. He spoke of nirvana, of a golden city in the nirvanic world. On another occasion, I was with the Ahuacos. They were speaking of karma, not as the Theosophists or pseudo-Rosicrucians speak of it. No, watching two Ahuacos converse in a cafe was something remarkable. They appeared to be discussing business. "I owe some money to my godfather. I must see how to repay him. I already paid part of a loan. I will see if I can get more credit for my business. I paid 500 pesos last time. That should allow me to get the credit." A profane observer would think they were simply talking about commerce. But no, they were speaking about their transactions with the law, about karma and dharma, and they did so far better than any pseudo-esotericist, modern occultist, or learned scholar, better even than Annie Besant and her followers. They are completely practical, 100%, and their way of studying my books was through meditation. Since most of them did not know how to read or write, they worked through meditation. And those who did know how to read would read the texts and later meditate on them. But the majority lacked formal literacy. Their intellectual center was not ruined, as happens with the so-called civilized people, those whom in the Sierra Nevada they call Bonachis. Bernardino, the Ahuaco, used to say to me, "Those Bonachis think they are very cultured, very civilized, because they have little inventions like cars, planes, ships, mere toys that are worth nothing. Yet they know nothing about the mysteries of life and death. And what do these supposedly cultured people know compared to that native, that truly illuminated one? So, my dear brothers, do not destroy your intellectual center, nor your emotional one. Every emotion must first pass through the filter of comprehension before the emotional center is allowed to react. We must become conscious of all our perceptions, of everything we study, of everything we receive. If you carefully study my books, Revolutionary Psychology and The Great Rebellion, and bring that knowledge into the practical field, then in the name of truth I tell you, you will attain the Buddhist annihilation. You will then establish psychological normality within your psyche. You will become as the three-brained beings of the cosmos. You will be able to directly experience that which does not belong to time, that which is beyond the body, the affections, and the mind. These are my words. If any of you has a question related to this topic, you may ask freely. Master, you have spoken about the abominable Kundatagwador organ. Does the abnormality of our psyche come from it? Yes, in reality, the abnormality of the psyche arises from the Kundatagwador organ, because that organ crystallized within us all the harmful consequences it produced. That is to say, the psychic aggregates exist because of the abominable Kundatagwador organ. Otherwise, they would not exist. Unfortunately, our consciousness is trapped within these aggregates, and because of that, the consciousness becomes abnormal. Consciousness is the psyche functioning in an abnormal manner. The terrestrials are abnormal. They are clinical cases currently being studied by all the brothers of the solar system. This is the primary reason extraterrestrials sometimes take a person to be examined in a laboratory. The abnormal state of terrestrial humanity has attracted attention throughout the cosmos. Their strange psyche, their unusual behavior, none of it corresponds to the cosmic culture of infinite space. But all of this was caused, unfortunately, by the abominable Kundatagwador organ. Another question, Master. Did all of humanity fall, or are there still human beings who preserved their primitive hierarchy? Yes, there are real men who did not fall and who still preserve their normality. From that epoch, yes, not all inhabitants are visible to those who dwell in the three-dimensional world of Euclid, in the fourth vertical of our planet Earth. There exist other humanities of flesh and bone who are normal and never developed the abominable Kundatagwador organ. They continue to reproduce themselves through Kriya Shakti. So the abnormal ones are those who inhabit the three-dimensional world of Euclid, those commonly known as terrestrials. Venerable Master, in the Gnostic ritual of the third degree, which comes from Egyptian wisdom, we read the following. I, the deceased, pronounce the same words 4 times, and I wish my enemies to be cast down and destroyed, and the red demons of Seth shall be delivered to the great destruction of the abyss and the nothingness. What is the meaning of I pronounce the same words 4 times? Obviously, we must pronounce the words so that the physical body may walk correctly. The words generate the astral verb, the words generate the birth of the mental body, and the words generate the body of conscious will. Thus, the verb expresses itself in four forms in order to bring about fourfold birth. As for the enemies, the red demons of Seth, who must be destroyed in the abyss and the nothingness, this is indeed how it must be. We must destroy them. Now, if we are unable or refuse to commit ourselves to the destruction of the ego, of evil, and of its undesirable elements, then nature will destroy them in the subterranean world, where one hears only weeping and the gnashing of teeth. I do not recommend descending into those regions, for the suffering there is immense. Yes, you can achieve the disintegration of the ego in the infernal worlds, and eventually emerge free of the ego after thousands of years. But I do not recommend it, because in those regions the suffering is terrible. Down there, everything is denser, more material. It is better to perform the work now, but if you do not wish to do it now, then nature will do it for you in those regions. Inferential peace, Samael Aun Weor.